Hello, everyone. Welcome to your home for sports talk. This is the best place for the best takes. And, of course, I am your host, Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show. Welcome back, everyone. We have officially entered my favorite time of the year, the NFL postseason. Some of your favorite teams are no longer in playoff contention, and unfortunately, they do not get to compete for the prized Lombardi Trophy. But we've got some excellent football ahead of us with some excellent teams. We'll get to that. And, of course, tonight, we don't have Monday Night Football in the NFL, but we do have some Monday Night Football. It is the College Football National Championship, Georgia versus TCU. Very exciting time and even day to be a football fan. Of course, today is also Black Monday. Some coaches being fired in the NFL and professional football world. I'm going to get to that, but first, I want to start with the biggest sports story of the year, something that, we certainly do not want to ever relive again, but we don't want to forget either. Of course, I'm talking about the Damar Hamlin situation with the Buffalo Bills, the story that rocked the NFL world. Last Monday, I came to you on this show, as I do every single Monday, and I was so excited to finish this recording and click the red button on my camera so I could edit and upload the show for that day, because I knew that later on, we could expect some fireworks. It was going to be the best Monday Night Football game of the year by every metric out there. What was trending on social media, how many tweets were coming out, what was going on, the pre-cable ratings, people tuning into NFL Countdown and to the pre-game show and ESPN. We knew we were in for what was going to be some excellent football action, or at least we assumed now. In terms of the actual football game, what took place before the incident, it did not disappoint. I mean, Joe Burrow's situational football, excellent display. Josh Allen came right back, wasn't able to score. They got a field goal on the board. And then, of course, next drive, probably the scariest moment of my football fandom. And, I heard Joe Buck, as the lead play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN, take us to commercial break as medical staff rushed out onto the field. And then I heard him bring us back, and then back to commercial, and then back to the air until he eventually said the news that kind of scared and shocked everyone, that CPR was being administered to Damar Hamlin. And that's when everything got real and when the feeling changed. We've seen, unfortunately, we have become desensitized to so many injuries. We're going to wait here. There's an injury. It's unfortunate. But the second he's carted off the field or he walks off on his own, they're going to get back to playing. This was not that kind of situation. This was not your normal injury where everything goes on as planned. And unfortunately, as players, they have been desensitized to this, and as fans, we have as well. It's almost like we don't have, not an appreciation, but we don't have it's like we need a reality check sometimes. We've got these players getting injured in the most horrific fashion, and we continue to play these games out. And moments after, unfortunately, they're forgotten. You get a sideline reporter, an update, hey, they're in the locker room, they're getting x-rays, and the game kind of just moves on. This was not that. And I want to interject in the timeline of the Damar Hamlin situation to kind of give my own story. When that happened and Joe Buck was bringing us to commercial break, and out of it, it reminded me of probably my scariest situation as a broadcaster. I haven't been doing this as long as some of your favorite analysts. I haven't been in the sports media or sports talk business as long as a Mike Greenberg or as a Stephen A. Smith or as a Joe Buck. But I have been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for 6, I think almost 7 years as a broadcaster, doing play-by-play, giving sports talk, giving opinions, interviewing athletes and coaches. And I actually encountered a situation, I don't want to say similar, but it was similar to the Damar Hamlin situation. I was in my freshman or sophomore year. I believe it was my freshman, but for the sake of accuracy, in that year, in that gap between freshman and sophomore year, and I was doing play-by-play, and it was a beautiful day here in Miami. It was from my high school, Columbus, and it was there was still daylight out, beautiful day, blue sky, very few, if any, clouds, and that to me, and thinking back, it was probably a JV game, and I just remember it being distinctly, it was a weekday, it wasn't necessarily a Friday, that it felt like a varsity game, it was in the middle of the week, and I was broadcasting it, doing play-by-play as I have for years, and it bothers me that I can't remember the exact injury, but one of our own players went down, and he didn't get up for a while. And there was a very large gap in between play. An ambulance was brought onto the field. He had to be taken away. I believe he was taken to a local hospital. And I remember as a broadcaster, and it's just someone watching, feeling so helpless in that moment. And, it's not nearly the same as ESPN airwaves or FCC airwaves, but we did have a broadcast. And we were broadcasting to an audience as we did for all those games. And I had to take us to commercial break and bring us back. And I didn't have a sideline correspondent. And I was getting very little information. And I felt I think helpless is the right word. I felt so helpless in that moment because there was a player, who I felt very close to because it was someone from my own school who was on the field, who was injured beyond anything I'd ever witnessed. I'd never seen anything like that in an NFL game, in a college game, and even though I'd been doing play-by-play for at least 2 years, I'd never seen anything like that. And I felt helpless because I couldn't give the fans accurate information as to what was going on. It was all speculation on my end. I felt helpless because I was there as a broadcaster with really no risk involved, watching these young men, put their health on the line. And I'm not putting anything out there. I'm not risking anything, but they are. And I felt helpless to the fans, helpless to the players, and just helpless as an onlooker that I was not a medical professional. I was not in a booth, but I was tucked away in the bleachers, and there was no way that I could help the fans, help the other players, or help that player who was injured. And I know I'm rambling here, but this was it was something that impacted me. It was a really rough moment for me. It's something that now in retrospect, I will never forget. But it is something that I had kind of not forgotten, but it had slipped my mind until that Monday Night Football game with Damar Hamlin last week. And I'll never forget that for the rest of the week, when I was doing play-by-play for that situation that was on the field, I felt awful. I felt really shaken. The rest of the week was just a blur. I remember that, even being in class. And he ended up being just fine. And it bothers me that I don't remember what the injury was, but it freaked me out for sure. And watching this Damar Hamlin situation play out on Monday Night Football, and of course, him being my primary focus, but also hearing Joe Buck bring them back from commercial break, it was the worst deja vu that I've ever experienced. And it was something that, freaked me out to my core. And, I did get a little emotional, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to admit that. Watching that Damar Hamlin situation played out, I assumed the worst. I think everyone did. When Joe Buck came back and he said that they were administering CPR and that it had been over 9 minutes. And, Pat McAfee has done he always does a great job of being real on his show the entire week. I watched it all last week. He's been very honest that when he heard 8 minutes, 9 minutes, and CPR, he had a normal reaction, which was like, is it possible to come back from this? That seems like a really long time. He had always been told, and so have I, by teachers and by coaches, and medical professionals, not getting oxygen and not getting air for a certain amount of time, it affects your brain and it can cause permanent damage. And I think everyone was just assuming the worst in that moment. And I certainly did. And, credit to the Buffalo Bills medical professionals who, in that moment, we can say, saved Damar Hamlin's life. And, so much talk about medical professionals in the United States and all over the world over the past couple of years because of the pandemic and because of other circumstances and because of our first responders being brought to the forefront. Can I just say credit to them? The United States, here in America, we are blessed to have excellent medical professionals. Not to say that other countries don't, but what we have here is really top of the line. And, for a routine they probably run where they don't ever expect something like this to happen on a football field, a truly a freak accident. Wow, that they were prepared to execute to that level. And of course, they have shown the personnel who were involved in administering that CPR, and they have gotten all the credit in the world this week. Can I just say I'm really proud of our football fans for uniting the way they have this week, and I am exceptionally proud for our medical professionals all over the country who do what they do on a daily basis, who don't have millions of people watching them like we did during that Monday Night Football game. But I think we can all say we have a greater appreciation and understanding for what goes into their job. And, this show is not going to be all sad. I do want to get to the happier stuff. But this moment in time was important, and I don't want to forget it. I don't want to let it go. And I want to make sure that we give everyone involved their due diligence and their credit. ESPN's broadcasters, that team, did such a great job of handling the situation. An unprecedented one, which could have gone wrong in so many ways beyond the actual injury and the health incident. So credit to those guys and gals who were very respectful of Damar Hamlin and of both teams. Credit to the coaches for saying, whoever's call it was, which is still up in the air at this point, we are not going to play this game. Just what a moment. And I don't want to forget anything. That's why I'm kind of pacing this out. But I do want to wrap this up with some good news. Moments before I came to record this episode, I got some news, as a lot of us probably have by this time, that Damar Hamlin is now being discharged from the Cincinnati Medical Center, and he is being transported to a more local hospital in Buffalo. And he's not out of the woods yet. They still need to run some tests, and they will monitor his sleep. But for a situation that seems so dark, so dire last week, to have it turn around like this with the amount of support and the way that he's reacted, we can't take this for granted. He's a young man that's very healthy, and so it's kind of understandable that he's made this comeback. But by the same token, it's not. I mean, he's talking. He seems to have all his motor skills. He's laughing. He's posting on Twitter and on Instagram and on social media. He's interacting with fans, his teammates. He has made what is already a remarkable comeback. And I've been thinking about tweeting this, and I didn't know if it was the right time or not, but I wanted to share it on the show. I think he deserves consideration, and I think he should be the comeback player of the year. No disrespect to Geno Smith or to Christian McCaffrey or to guys like that who have had some tremendous comebacks this year, but that is the greatest comeback in the sport of football. That was really special, and to see the kind of strides that he's made over the last week, that is the comeback of the year. He is the comeback player of the year to me, even if he never steps foot on a football field again, which, based on how quickly he's recovered and how well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on the field again this season. Of course, I don't want to rush to that. I don't want to make it the focus, but I did think that the focus should be Damar Hamlin. I wanted to give my thoughts on the situation because I didn't get to last week. But respect to Damar Hamlin. My prayers go out to him. Damar, if you're watching this, or if you ever get to watch this clip back later, years from now, know that I, as a football fan, as a broadcaster, as someone who loves football, who loves the game, who appreciates players like yourself putting it all out on the line, thank you so much for the perspective that you've given all of us, and we're all really proud of you, and we're all rooting for you to make a comeback. This has been an incredible week, so many ups and downs, but he really is the staple of what it means to be a fighter and what it means to be a player in the National Football League. Not all the glamour, not a quarterback, not this $100 million generational wealth that we talk about. 6th round pick, scrappy guy, someone who's had to fight, who was not a starter, who was a backup, who has now pushed his way and fought his way into being one of the biggest and best players in this league. I mean, he was doing excellent things for Buffalo, and now he is doing excellent things for the world, and how he's united us as a fan base. Props to him, and just hope that he gets better and he can recover to full strength once more. By 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, the Detroit Lions had already been eliminated from playoff contention, but that did not mean that they were going to go down without a fight. They imposed their will, they imposed their toughness, and really they imposed their culture on the Green Bay Packers, resulting in a Packers loss, resulting in the Packers not moving on to the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers being eliminated from the Lombardi hunt. And, he went out into the middle of the field and was saying his, giving the other players his props, shaking hands, doing what he does. And one of the Detroit Lions players said, "Hey, can we do a jersey swap, or can I get your jersey?" And Aaron looked at him and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to hold on to this one for a while." And you could hear it slightly right behind the broadcasters' voices at the time, because the camera did have audio. And I think every NFL fan around the country took a little step back there because everyone was thinking the same thing. Wow, is this really it for Aaron Rodgers? Will Aaron Rodgers hang it up after what's been a career that is, one of the greatest of all time at the position? And he walked off into the locker room and down the tunnel, kind of shooed away the cameraman, arms around the shoulders of Romeo Doubs, one of his old friends who he brought back this year. And in that moment, I saw Aaron looking around the stadium, and everyone knew it. He was taking a mental picture of Lambeau Field, of those fans, of that moment, remembering what it felt like. We all have moments in life where we know it's special in the moment, and you want to hold on to those. That's what Aaron was doing. Because, truthfully, Aaron is not 100% in. He has admitted to that, and although he hasn't explicitly said it, take a look at his sound bites, listen in. He is not 100% in. That very well could have been his last game. And as he walked through the tunnel, I'm human. I'm a sports fan. I appreciate this game more than most. I did feel sad for like a second. And hear me out here, because some people think I'm just very critical of Aaron Rodgers. And, people criticize me a lot. Not in the YouTube comment section. They're fairly quiet. But on TikTok, when I put up the clips, oh boy, I've got fans that go after me for days. And I mean actual days on end, like daily replies, hour on the hour, trying to poke and whatever. But I have been critical of Aaron, and I don't think I've been overly critical of him. I have said, and I said prior to the season, he is not good in the big moment. And despite what the media tells you, and I hate to say that because I do feel like I'm a part of the media and I respect the guys out there who do their job, but despite what football culture and fandom has told you about Aaron Rodgers, he is actually the polar opposite. The Hail Mary play for him was so famous, and it's done, it's arguably one of his best moments, his highlight-worthy moments. But it's so contrary to who Aaron Rodgers actually is. Because Aaron Rodgers, despite the Hail Mary plays that are famous, that he is famous for till this day, Aaron Rodgers is not a clutch player. As a matter of fact, his fourth quarters in elimination games, in must-win games, in the last game of the regular season, and the last game of the year, are absolutely awful. He's actually, forget the fourth quarter. He's awful in the game. He just doesn't play well. And the writing has been on the wall for Green Bay. I wouldn't, that would be a lie to say. I was going to say I wouldn't have given him the contract. You had to. Back-to-back MVP, he was going to go somewhere else. But I've been on this Aaron Rodgers thing for a while now. If you've been watching this show, I know we're a relatively young show, but if you've been watching since before the season started, I said I did not have a problem with Aaron Rodgers criticizing his young wide receivers as long as he got better with them, as long as I didn't hear him complaining in the actual regular season once the game started to matter, and as long as he turned things around. Like, he mentored them. He, not coddled them, but he was a man's man for them. He took it easy on them. He helped them get better. He mentored them. And I know he's not a wide receiver, but he's a quarterback. He does have a role in their development. And sure enough, Aaron Rodgers, throughout the course of the season, after missing time in training camp, after not being there in the offseason to train with his new teammates, he criticized his teammates throughout the season, and they did not develop nearly as fast as the Green Bay Packers needed them to. Romeo Doubs had a very rough season overall. Christian Watson had a rough start to the season and got better as games went on. But the point being, time is everything with young players. It takes time to get accommodated. This show, it took time for me to get as good as I am now. And 6 months from now, I'll be exponentially better than I am now, because when you're young and you're starting out in something new, you're not going to be good in the beginning, chances are, but you are going to get exponentially better as time goes on, as you get experience. But here's the thing. Aaron Rodgers wasn't giving them a chance to get that experience. He wasn't working on his timing with them in the offseason. He wasn't there. He wasn't flying them out. He wasn't spending quality time with those wide receivers, getting to know them, who they are, what makes them tick, and what makes them successful. And so I knew that was going to be a problem, and I said it in the offseason, prior to the season starting. And sure enough, Aaron Rodgers struggled big time all year long with the young wide receivers. And they didn't start clicking until it was almost too late. And quite frankly, I say almost too late because they weren't quite eliminated from playoff contention yet, but it was too late. I don't care if you're not eliminated yet. And especially now that they've developed, how good Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs could have been because they've shown you flashes of not greatness, but flashes of being good star players. They've shown you flashes of being NFL caliber wide receivers. And that's the most painful part because you saw that as the season went on, as they got reps. If Aaron Rodgers would have been there in the offseason, if he would have trained with them, now you can start saying all these what ifs, and they work against Aaron. If you would have been there, if you would have been there for your teammates, if you would have been present, if you would have practiced with them, if you would have committed just a little bit in the offseason, you could have had a way better season. You could have qualified for the playoffs because getting into the playoffs at the end of the day, as bad as they were, it came down to the last game of the season. They were not eliminated from playoff contention in week 8 or in week 9. They were still very much in it, and they were in it until the very last game they could have gotten in. So you can blame it on Aaron. Yes, you can. If Aaron had been more disciplined, if he had been more available, if he had been there for his teammates, these guys would have gotten better a lot faster. And instead of getting better in December and November and making those rookie strides, they could have been this good in September, October. The timing could have been down. You could have been executing at this level months ago. But Aaron Rodgers, being the individualist that he is, being as arrogant as Aaron Rodgers is, did not put in the time, did not train with his teammates in the offseason, criticized the young wide receivers prior to the season starting while he wasn't even practicing with them or trying to make them better. He was criticizing them without giving them a solution. He was creating a problem without there being a solution. He was pointing it out, and he was doing it for other teams to see. And that's the problem that I had with it. You were letting other teams know that you weren't confident in your guys, but then you weren't giving them the time of day to get better with you. You weren't giving them that opportunity. So it's just an overall mess. A mess. And you may think that's a little bit over the top. It's not. I mean, Aaron Rodgers getting paid $50 million guaranteed per season. If I'm paying you that money, it's because I want you. If I'm paying you that money, it's because I want you to get us to the playoffs. I want you to get us to the promised land. I expect that of you. I am willing to deal with the baggage of Aaron Rodgers and all the extra stuff because, hey, he's a quarterback that's going to get us into the postseason. Green Bay can't even sit here and say that today because they paid all that money to Aaron Rodgers. They've dealt with all the drama. They've dealt with all the outside noise that Aaron has created and caused. It is his fault. And now they don't reap any of the rewards. They paid out the money. They dealt with the PR firestorm. And what do they have to show for it? Not a Lombardi. Not a postseason run. Not even a postseason appearance. Because they didn't qualify for the playoffs. Because Aaron Rodgers didn't get his timing down with his teammates early in the year. Did not support them. Didn't make those around him better. Aaron Rodgers did not elevate anyone around him this season. And if he did, and you believe he did, it was too late. I think it's time for the Green Bay Packers to, we can feel melancholy about the Aaron Rodgers situation and about the fact that it may very well be over, his storied career, but if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I don't need Aaron Rodgers' decision. I want to be out of the Aaron Rodgers business. I said that months ago on this show. Months ago. I want out of the Aaron Rodgers business if I'm Green Bay, especially with how good Jordan Love looked. I mean, is Green Bay really going to let Aaron stay, let him do what he's going to do, and have to fight Jordan Love, who seems like he could be a good quarterback in the NFL, and have to trade him away or have to sign his 5th-year extension or grant it and have to pay 2 quarterbacks massive money? That just doesn't work. Hopefully, for the sake of the Green Bay Packers, if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I hope Aaron Rodgers retires. But if he doesn't, I'm trading him away. I don't want him back in Green Bay. I don't. I can build with my draft picks. I'm I'm an organization that is historically good at drafting. I can build around Jordan Love. There's a lot of money that can be spent in free agency. And the dead cap hit doesn't really matter because you're not paying another quarterback yet. You're not paying Jordan Love yet. So I'd get rid of Aaron Rodgers if he comes back. I would not let him stay in the building. You can tell Aaron, hey, it's been nice, but that's it. It's over. This relationship has come to a close. And I know Green Bay fans and even football fans in general may feel like, oh, I want a little bit more. Aaron Rodgers' career, if anything, was a little bit disappointing and underwhelming because after looking so good, after being the most talented quarterback in NFL history for such a long time, until Patrick Mahomes came by, and after being the guy and winning a Lombardi so early on and being the one to take the reins from Brett Favre, the fact that you only got one at the end of all that, sure, he got MVPs and he got a lot of individual accolades, but the Lombardi, the best and biggest and most important trophy in the NFL. Tom Brady won 7. Aaron won 1. There's levels to this. We can talk about legacy all day. You can talk about greatest quarterback talent of all time all day. But the fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers did not give us what he could have. He was never super committed to the game of football, as great as he was during MVP seasons. It wasn't a kind of football that got everyone involved, and he was never good enough to rise above his circumstance. We've seen quarterbacks with awful rosters, with awful defenses, with awful offenses rise above it all. Joe Burrow, in his first year with the Bengals, where he got injured, did amazing. His second year, of course, had a better offense, but made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Players, the really good ones, the quarterbacks, they succeed in spite of it all. They rise above it. They can get over the hump. Aaron Rodgers never could. One Lombardi after this many years, that's all you have to show for it. Sure, it's more than I'll ever win. I understand that. I'm not being hypocritical here. But to say that after everything he could have been, this is how it ended up. Come on, be honest. If you've watched Aaron Rodgers for as long as I have, or even longer, it is disappointing. It is an unceremonious end. And for Aaron Rodgers to say that he doesn't have any regrets, I would. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I would have regrets. I'd regret that I didn't try harder, that I didn't put a little more time in. Especially this year, I'd regret that I didn't spend more time with my teammates. After I criticized them and I said the young wide receivers weren't coming along, I would have regret not having spent more time developing those guys, especially if this was my last season. I would regret not having given it my all in the offseason to make those guys better so that they could be as good as they were in Week 18. They could have developed earlier in the year, and maybe they wouldn't have made as many mistakes, and we could have won more games. And if I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd regret that because ultimately it cost them a trip to the postseason because it was one game. It was one game that kept them out. You're telling me if you're not working with these wide receivers in the offseason, you can't get timing right, you can't figure it out. I am overly critical of certain players like a Dak Prescott and like an Aaron Rodgers because I know what could have been. And I'm honest. And I see things that other people don't. And I say the things that no one else is willing to say. And, that's the end of my Aaron Rodgers rant. But I think he should have a little bit of regret. I would. This is becoming my biggest I told you so moment of my sports broadcasting career. The way that I have talked about Dak Prescott all year, and I have pointed out the obvious flaws even before the season started, and the Dak defenders have continued to do what they do best and stand blindly by Dak Prescott and the flaws that he has and the mistakes that he makes. I mean, this is an all-time battle. I'm not a Stephen A. Smith. I'm not looking to copy what he does. I'm just calling it like I see it. Dak Prescott, his decision-making, for me, it's awful. I can't stand it. I don't know how Cowboys fans put up with it. That couldn't be, people say, I wouldn't let that happen to me. That could not be my quarterback. Not on Sundays. Now, once again, I want to preface this by saying, excellent person, awesome role model, best guy at the podium, an excellent person, I have nothing bad to say about Dak Prescott, the person. But the player, the quarterback, I mean, I just don't understand how fans of Dak Prescott and the Cowboys don't see what I see. They don't see the writing on the wall. They don't see the obviously bad reads and the even worse mistakes that Dak Prescott makes. I was looking at every single snap of this game. Sometimes I don't get to watch every snap of the games. I have to switch back and forth. But the Cowboys, I make sure because it's a take that I know I'm very critical of. And I don't want to go after a guy if it's not founded. But my criticism for Dak Prescott is coming from a place of true knowledge. I am watching this guy. I am watching his moves and the decisions that he makes. And it's really bad. I don't understand how people can call Dak Prescott a top 5 or a top 10 quarterback. He's not. Because I named the other week 12, 13, 14, maybe even 16 quarterbacks better than Dak Prescott. Or I think it was 15 quarterbacks better than Dak Prescott. And I might have more to add to that list today than I did at that point in the season. Dak Prescott is tied for the most interceptions this season, and he missed several games this year. I mean, interceptions are, people hate him. I've heard Greg Cosell say you need to look at each one as an individual play, and I understand that. I respect that, but interceptions as a quarterback are the greatest indicator of mistakes and of malpractice of decision-making. It's the perfect indicator of, hey, touchdowns, you're successful, you're doing what's good, you're doing it the right way. Interceptions, you got to fix some things. So, Dak Prescott, I want to say this explicitly. There were several occasions during that Cowboys game where Dak Prescott was making awful reads that the worst quarterbacks in the league would probably make. I mean, in the second quarter, on back-to-back plays, with about 6 minutes and change left on the clock, on back-to-back plays, Dak Prescott threw it downfield into triple coverage. On back-to-back plays. Did not take the underneath stuff. And there were... I purposely rewinded my TV, my remote, because I wanted to make sure I was getting this right in the moment. I would rewind my TV after those plays to make sure, okay, well, he's throwing it downfield. Let me give him the benefit of the doubt. Are the guys underneath covered? No. They're open. Open by 5 yards, the halfback. Whether it was Pollard or Zeke, or they had some tight end routes with Schultz underneath. There were plenty of options here. But Dak Prescott, for some reason, has started playing like he's Patrick Mahomes this year, trying to make plays happen that, quite frankly, there's a reason he was a late-round pick. He is not talented enough to make these Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen downfield throws. He was not the best guy in high school, not the best guy in college. He's not the best guy in the NFL. That's why he fell in the draft. And I don't know what to tell you. He can't afford to rely so heavily on this playmaking nature that you see some of the best guys in the league do. And Dak Prescott is not one of those guys. I've talked about this stat on this show. Dak has a losing record when throwing the ball 40-plus times a game. When being forced to get into a quarterback shootout, which is an essential skill in today's NFL, he can't win those games. You know who can? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the best guys in the league. So if you want to say that Dak Prescott is one of the best guys in the league and you want to defend him so fiercely, tell me why all these stats point in a different direction. The interceptions, the win-to-loss ratio when throwing the ball 40-plus times a game, his decision-making, watch the schemes, watch the routes, watch the reads. He's not making the right ones. He is not making the right reads. He is throwing the ball into areas that he, quite frankly, should never consider throwing. He shouldn't consider throwing into triple coverage. First of all, he doesn't have a cannon of an arm. And his accuracy is not that of a Joe Burrow or I'm trying to think of an accurate quarterback. It's not as accurate as a Drew Brees, for example. It's not even as good as a Patrick Mahomes. He's not that. He's not as talented as them. He's not as good as them. So I don't understand why people are defending Dak Prescott and why Dak Prescott has found the need this year to make these kinds of decisions, because they're awful. It looks really bad. And, I'm done with the Dak thing. Let me focus now on the Cowboys, because they are going to the postseason, and they are going to play the Bucs in the opening round. And it is a very winnable game for them, if we're being honest, because the Buccaneers are a pretty dysfunctional team outside of Tom Brady in the 2-minute drill and outside of Tom Brady taking over. So I was thinking about this. The Cowboys, I've given them a lot of credit on like TikTok lives or on live broadcasts when I'm talking with fans. And actually, I'm realizing now I have to take a step back. The Cowboys really only have two playmakers on offense, Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb. And both of those guys have had stretches where they get injured or they're a little banged up and they're not themselves or you don't have them available. The Cowboys need Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb to be healthy because those are their only playmakers. Dak Prescott's not one of them. Zeke is not one of them. That offensive line, it's not. And Dalton Schultz is not a playmaker. So Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb, only two weapons in a NFL postseason that is loaded with talent, that is loaded with teams that have weapons, that is going to be, they're going to face other excellent defenses, and you only have two playmakers, CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard? I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Also, their defense, outside of Micah Parsons, is not good. It's not good. They have not performed well in weeks where he doesn't do well. He is the defense. Trayvon Diggs has been kind of silent the last couple weeks. This Dallas team, it is so, as talented as they are, it is so easy for them to be a one and done. For them to make it to the playoffs and not even win a game. For them to lose to the Buccaneers. It is very realistic to say that the Buccaneers will not win that game. Because outside of CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, Micah Parsons, and Trayvon Diggs, I honestly don't understand, I don't know who would come up big for them in a moment when they need it most. It's not going to be Dak Prescott. It's not going to be the O-line. And their defense is not what it was last year, as good as they are. It's clearly not. There are holes. And Dan Quinn is leaving them too. It seems like he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. This postseason could be very problematic for the Cowboys, and their future doesn't look great either. Because now you're dealing with an aging Dak Prescott. Yep. We're getting old, and so is everybody around us. Dak Prescott is getting up there in age, and you're paying an aging quarterback. And you got to pay other guys, and you're hitting that cap ceiling. I don't know. I've been on this for months, for years prior to the show, but for months on the show. And if you don't get it by now, and you don't believe me now, you're never going to. I've said it about Dak. I've said it about the Cowboys. I'm not here to bang on them. I'm just saying what is the obvious thing that I see to my naked eye. I mean, the writing is on the wall. And if you think that Dak Prescott is going to take over when you need him most, you've got something else coming. It ain't happening. The Miami Dolphins, in a situation that was just as tight as their win over the Jets, have squeaked their way into the playoffs. I expected them to be a wild card team. They are a wild card team, so I got that prediction right. But, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I thought long and hard about this Dolphins game. And I can only come to the conclusion that, look, there's a lot of, I'm from Miami, but I don't blindly support the teams here. There are a lot of people that do. And there are a lot of people who don't understand my rationale for Tua and the Dak Prescotts of the world. Hey, why don't I like them? Very likable guys. It's just on the field, you got to be honest here. I don't allow niceness or kindness or who you are as a person to cloud my judgment of who you are as a player. I never will. And I think that's one of my strongest skills. And I think it's, if you're watching this show, why you watch this show. And the Tua thing to me is just, look, I'm not going to beat up on the guy anymore, but facts are facts. And this situation is very clear. The Chiefs pay a guy like Patrick Mahomes $50 million a season because, first of all, he's going to touch the ball 60 times a game, and because he's the most important player on the team by far. And he's a superstar at the position. But the reason you would pay a quarterback, forget Mahomes, maybe like a Josh Allen, and even like some of the mid-level guys, the reason you pay a Kirk Cousins as much as you do is because you at least know, hey, even if they're not one of the better starting quarterbacks in the league, this guy's going to be available. And I can only pay one quarterback. I can only pay one quarterback in today's day and age. I mean, there is a salary cap. I can't spend on 3 different quarterbacks. So the Dolphins here are in a situation where they may have to extend Tua an offer. They may have to give him an extension. And I wouldn't do it. And I don't think they should. Because at the end of the day, I can't pay Tua to miss multiple games in the year. Other positions like corner, like safety, they're valuable, but they can miss time. There are replacements. My defensive line, I can lose guys. My linebackers, I can lose guys. I can't lose my quarterback. Not in today's NFL. I can only pay 1 on my roster. I can't pay 2 or 3. It's not the way it works. It's not the way the cap is structured. I can only pay 1 quarterback. I can only commit to 1 quarterback. And if he's going to be out all year, or if he's going to be out half the season, and injuries are going to be a problematic thing with him that keep on coming up throughout the season, I can't deal with that. Tua cannot be my quarterback. If I was a GM, if I was the Dolphins, I can't do it. I can't extend him this guaranteed extension or promise him all this money or give him all this guaranteed money. I can't do it. I need my quarterback to be there. That's why I'm paying him. I can only commit to 1. I can only pay 1. And, Tua has... I understand it's been unfortunate. I understand the concussion things are sometimes out of his control. But at the end of the day, regardless of what people will tell you, the honest-to-God truth in the NFL is ability. The best ability is availability. And Tua has availability problems. It's why someone asked me in the TikTok comment section the other day, Tua or Dak Prescott? I said Dak because availability matters. I don't know when it stopped mattering. Maybe it was in my younger sports fandom era when basketball really started implementing load management, but it's a myth, this availability not mattering. It does. Look at the teams who make it far in any sport or the guys who do the best. It's not the ones who are missing every other night or every other game or who are out a third of their games. It's never been how we remember the greatest or the great ones, and it's a characteristic that you can't overcome. You got to be on the floor. You got to be on the field. You got to be out there in the game, and Tua is not. And I think that's why the Dolphins need to take a serious look at the free agency market. I'd love to get a guy like Derek Carr in Miami. I don't need a superstar. I just need a distributor. And Derek Carr, despite what people may tell you, is a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. He puts the ball where it needs to be. This was an uncharacteristically bad season for him. He will bounce back. I hope it's with the Miami Dolphins and our excellent team. We will see. But for now, that is all. That's all for this week's episode of the Benjamin Cure Show. I hope you enjoyed. I know I had a lot of rambling today, but I had a lot to get to, all out of my mind. It wasn't going to be a stats-heavy episode. That's not what this was. It was just kind of a recapping. Next week, I will be back with, my T's and my I's dotted and whatnot and crossed. You're going to get a very stat-heavy episode, and we'll be back for the postseason. But for now, I thought today's episode was a better conversational one and a more storytelling one. Once again, don't want to forget about the Damar Hamlin situation. I think it puts everything to perspective. If you've got a loved one that you haven't called in a while, call them up, give them a hug, talk to that family member, talk to that friend, and reach out. Reach out to those who are around you, and make sure to take those around you, take them seriously, and definitely don't take them for granted, because they're here one second, they're gone the next. And I think that was a really important reminder. If we can take away anything from the very up and down and horrific and scary week that we have had in the sports world. Well, that's it. You can watch the show here once again on YouTube. The clips are on social media. You know where to find them, and you know where to find me. Until next week, I'm Benjamin Cure. This is the Benjamin Cure Show.